As principal of Onion Lake School, I must affirm that the day of our residential school will not be passed until the light of civilization has been carried into every home.
The Old Sun Residential School, one of the largest and most modern of the 19 administered by the Church for the original Canadians. Here, young Blackfoot boys and girls are taught the regular provincial curriculum. From the lowest grades, they are taught to speak English.
We were so free at home. We were able to talk our language. We were happy. And it was hard to understand why we couldn't do it when it was such a part of our life, that we were, with the freedom we had to be able to speak our language and to be able to share and laugh and now that we weren't able to, I think because of getting our mouth washed out with soap, and sometimes I can just still taste that P&G soap that they used to use.
But I never did really get a strap. I don't remember getting a strap speaking my language, but I had to write 500 lines saying I must not speak my language.
Today I carry the pain of that school. We weren't allowed to speak our language. When we were caught when speaking our language, we were slapped like this. You know, those rollers, they had metal edges, and we bled.
Report to the Synod, Diocese of Athabasca, 1888. The success of our work depends upon securing the children. The older people are too often set in their ways and are by long habits disinclined to change.
I do know in later years, my mother said that if we didn't go to school, that we would be taken away and we would never see home again. So Mother talked to us and she told us it was just a short time. And we believed her, of course, and she was out of trouble, so we went to school.
They learn the value of cooperation. The girls prepare the seed potatoes for the boys to sow. This way, the school farm produces most of the vegetables they need.
We were always lining up, and we were told to go in a shower with 10 of us in one shower, and then come out from there, and then a lady would be standing there, a woman, which is a supervisor, checking us up to see if we were dirty all over, and that was done once a week to us, and our clothes, clean clothes, were given to us at the time. And my number was 503. We were all labeled as numbers, which is treaty numbers.
It's such a pain to be stripped of your dignity, because when I went to residential school, I had braids. I had braids, and I had my grandmother put a beaded necklace on me, white beads. She knew I was going somewhere. She knew I was going away from home. So she put these beads on me and tied them up, because I bathed with them and I didn't take them off at all. And when I got to school, they cut my braids off and they cut my beads off. And my beads went rolling on the floor, and I said, my grandma gave me those, and I was picking up the beads. And she told me to go, and the staff told me to go and put them in the garbage, in the wastebasket. And I said, no, my grandma. And so she hit my hand, and I let them go. But I kept one, I stuck that bead in my mouth.
Well, first I wanted to do something worthwhile with my life. And my dad always had great respect for the Indian peoples. So I thought this would be really great to be able to go and work amongst them. I don't know, we felt we were being helpful. All the things you hear now, you wonder.
We had to learn to survive and live around the abuses that went on. And when I told my parents my mother what was happening, my mother said, always do good. Don't do anything to make yourself feel bad. So with that, that was another way of coping and surviving.
She was epileptic, and she had an epileptic seizure while the principal was strapping her. He was strapping her because she had gone up to the dorm, and she wasn't supposed to go to the dorm. So he chased her, and she was supposed to go to his office, and she wouldn't. And later on, as she was beat up, and after she had come through her convulsion, and we were getting water in our hands to pour on her face and running, she told us that she didn't want to be raped. And I didn't know the meaning of the word. She cried, and she sat there and said that she would never, no matter how much he beat her, she would never go to his office.
Well, I had to learn being on time for things and routine and things so they could go out and get a job in the world, in the white man's world.
These boys and girls are taught to use their minds. Theirs is the wonderland of learning, the land of history, literature, science, mathematics, music, and the nurture of the spirit.
Don't need any kind of education to clean somebody's toilets, you know, clean their bathrooms. And I felt so, but I did it with dignity also. I went to work. And
the government robbed me of my own father, robbed me of my grandfather, robbed me of my language and my culture, and put me here with all these girls. So different. Just to be raised in a way that you just grow up, you know, every day. You just grow up. You don't have no normal mother and dad meals with the family at the table.
We were just really taking the place of the parents who weren't there and trying to give them guidance.
We didn't have no family, you know, nobody to mold us and show us and teach us. Family, love, hugging, listening, and having compassion, you know. All those things they're not normal with children, you know. Children learn by parents hugging them and teaching them and crying with them and helping them, you know. Not here. You had these even non-native people who were different than you were, teaching you and over you. There was no family, no loving mother, no father. Rules all the time. You woke up in the morning and you to the sound of the bell ringing, you come down and you're lined up and you're numbered. What kind of a life is that?
had no parental skills. We had no role models of what a marriage should be like. We had no direction from parents. All we had from staff was strict and always toe the line and don't have any fun and don't, that sort of thing.
I think the biggest effect that my mother being raised in a residential school had on me is how I was raised. She was taught how to deal with certain things, so when I had to deal with things as I grew up, she tried to teach me the way she was taught. However, those ways were not very natural, not to us anyway, because they were different from how we were raised culturally. Sharing in our culture is natural, taken for granted. It goes way back from when, if you were successful in a hunt, you shared it to sustain everyone. Whereas in a residential school, because everybody was reduced to a number and isolated within the residential schools, you had to very much fend for yourself.
As bishop and former residential school principal, I say that it is the function of the church and its representatives, as well as the representatives of the government, to help these people to understand what are the responsibilities of citizenship, so that they can go along with what we mean by integration.
I don't blame the church, because it was a different time. I compare the Native struggle, a lot of the Native struggle, with the civil rights movement in the States. Mind you, the stage we're at now is a stage the black civil rights movement was maybe in the 60s. Slavery at one time was the natural thing for a lot of people. Not for everybody in America. So at one time in Canada's past, educating the Western education, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and the missionary work, the quest to save and everyone and bring the word of God to people, to savages, and stop the massacres. You know, you read those things in history books. And part of that taming was taking them and isolating them and putting them in a controlled, very much controlled environment. I don't blame the church for thinking the way it did back then, because their own information was limited as well. They had their own blinders on, and their reasons for doing things were, they thought were very straightforward at that time.
I mean, assimilation was the conventional wisdom of the day through the first half of the century and beyond. So And so the church followed the policy of assimilation. And so you've got two sets of abuses. The ones that are that were related to violence and sexual abuse and intimidation and all that sort of thing on the one hand. And you've got the other set, which were things where the church simply accepted the conventional wisdom of the day without listening to the people. I mean, there was an educational system among Native people, but we didn't accept it because it taught them the skills that they needed, which was how to trap and how to hunt and how to fish and how to run a family and all of those kinds of things.
But there was no other place for Indian children. We made fun of each other. We fought with each other. Every day. All lumped together in that basement. Coming around, lining up 2 by 2 to come and walk around the school. Being shut down here. The little lot there was our playground, and these were on off limits. The only time we came and lined up here is when we were going to that building over there, which was supposed to be a church. I wonder how in the world could they teach us about church?
And as overlight, the glory of thy holy name. Amen.
Gotta come out. We gotta hear our stories. We've got to tell it like it was. And we're not making them up. They were for real, very real. And it's stressful and painful, and I ache every time I see someone that's product from the residential school, like time after time, in all my years. And there's sometimes I can't say anything, but I hug them. And I think that's a form of healing too.
Abuses, emotional, physical, sexual, cultural abuses went on in residential schools. I want people to learn that. I want people to accept it, and I want them to confront it and deal with it.
The church has some accountability for some responsibility for all of that. And the principle is that Aboriginal people, with them lies the primary responsibility for identifying those issues and for pressing for an appropriate response. And then the second one is that the response is primarily around healing of individuals, healing of relationships within communities, because these patterns of abuse have, according to the testimony of many of the abused, have repeated themselves in their own dealings with their own households and within their own communities. And then there's the healing of a relationship between the Aboriginal communities and the churches.
Unfortunately, I think the healing is going to have to start with a lot of pain, which will come from people reliving those experiences that they went through in the residential schools. Which is the most difficult thing. The first step is the toughest step. People have buried those emotions and thoughts and buried them a long time ago. And as the years and months and days pass by, more and more stuff gets heaped up on top and buries it deeper. So there's a long way to go to get all of those things out. The good and bad of that is once they do come out, they'll come pouring out. And I hope people are ready for that. I hope the people that want to help the former students and staff deal with those things are ready for a real surge of people wanting help and healing.
Being in therapy has helped me see so much better, and learning to forgive too, so much freedom. I know the freedom that I have after I've forgiven is, well, the Great Spirit, the God that I had then is not the same one I have today. Today it's much more intense.
If I had not had counseling, when I realized there was something very definitely wrong with me, if I had not had counseling, I don't know, I probably would be somewhere, maybe in a mental hospital somewhere.
I'm not doing this for revenge. My love for my mother, my ties to my culture, my faith in the church, my involvement with the residential schools working group, and the Aboriginal Rights Coalition. And with the video is all to help my mom. When people hear this and see the video, they won't see it as a direct attack against the church, because that's not what we want. That's not what's intended. We're solely searching to heal.